in conversation with Shane Warne, we've decided to structure it slightly this evening. Obviously, the cricket, impending cricket, the Australian tour, and that's one part of it. The other is his craft, his journey, and finally, his views on, various aspects of the modern day game and where he sees it headed and what he thinks about it, his thoughts on it. And to start in the beginning, Shane, really, how did you get into leg spin bowling? We knew that you idolized, or we know that you idolized Dennis Lillee. But how did you get into, such a difficult craft as leg spin bowling?
Yeah, thanks, Varun. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming. I suppose when I was growing up in the 70s, a long time ago, and the early 80s, when Australia, you looked at the West Indies who were dominating world cricket, it was all fast bowling. For me in Australia, you had Dennis Lillee and Jeff Thompson, these fast bowlers. All of us young kids wanted to be those guys. So for me, there was Abdul Qadir, who was a wonderful leg spinner for Pakistan. And my local cricket club, there was a couple of young cricketers there that I played on matting. So the ball always accentuated. When you bowled off spin, it would turn a lot, or leg spin, the ball would turn a lot. So I got a bit intrigued by that. So I just started to learn off a couple of those guys down at my local cricket club and practiced and practiced. So I used to be more of a batsman than a bowler. When I first started playing first class cricket for Victoria in the late 80s and early 90s, I was a batsman batting number 7, bowling a bit of leg spin. And then as I sort of played a bit more, I dropped down the order and bowling took over. But I think the one thing about leg spin bowling that I absolutely love is that you always learned. You kept learning all the time about spin bowling. You never really understood the craft that well. Every day, every conditions, situations of games, there was so many different things you could learn about leg spin bowling. And more importantly, it was fun. There was a lot of, running in 20, 30 metres seemed like a lot of hard work where you could come off a few steps and bowl. But it was great fun bowling leg spin, and the tricks you could do with that to try and embarrass some of the players was always good fun.
Yeah, really. Just tell us, coming to your debut into Test cricket, you were fast-tracked into international cricket, and it wasn't the most auspicious of beginnings. So when did you truly start to believe?
Yeah, look, I think I was 21 or 22. I'd played only a handful of first-class games. I remember getting picked for the Australia versus India Test series in Sydney Cricket Ground. I didn't know half the Australian team. I hadn't met them before, which is quite unusual. I remember introducing myself to Bruce Reid and Jeff Marsh and a few of those players who I'd never met before. So it was quite daunting. And then playing for the Indian side, there were so many legends playing in that side. Ben Sarkar, Ravi Shastri, Kapil Dev, the list goes on, and also a young Sachin Tendulkar, who I think was about 12. When he was playing that, he made an unbelievable 100 as well. So it was quite daunting. Ravi Shastri got 206, smashed me all over the park. I eventually got him out for 206, caught it deep cover. So I thought it was sort of a welcome to Test cricket, which was very difficult. We went to Adelaide after that, to Perth, and it was sort of a welcome to Test cricket. It was, this is hard. And for me, that made me hungry. I never really understood what I wanted to do with my life. I was sort of thrown into cricket. I always wanted to play Australian rules football. But I had a taste of Test cricket then, and I thought, well, that's what I want to do. I went away from that series in 91, 92, and I spent all of 92 getting super fit. I worked with Terry Jenner for 6 months, bowling, and the last session I ever did in Adelaide before I got picked to go to Sri Lanka was the last ball I bowled. I was blindfolded, and I had a handkerchief down on middle stump on a good length, and Terry said, I reckon you're good enough now that you can land this blindfolded. Gosh. And I was blindfolded, he videoed it, and I bowled the ball, hit the spot, and hit the handkerchief, and he said, look, you're ready to go. So we went to Sri Lanka, and I thought I was bowling pretty well at that time, and the first innings, I think Sri Lanka made 580. I got smashed all over the park, and I contributed with the bat, and I remember sitting on the balcony with Alan Border, and I was pretty down in the dumps and pretty depressed about what was going on, and thought, you know what, I've tried my best, I've trained, I've done everything. Why aren't I taking wickets? And Alan Border, you could sense that, and he said to me, he said, mate, if you keep bowling the way you are, I promise you, it'll all happen. Anyway, the Sri Lanka needed 186, I think, to win, and they were none for 70, one for 120. I came on to bowl, went for none for 11 off my first over. It got down to 16 runs to win, and they had 4 wickets in hand. Greg Matthews was bowling at one end. Greg Matthews took a wicket. Alan Border asked me to come back on. I thought, shit, they only need 16, we're going to lose here. I bowled a maiden, so I thought, phew, it's not over. Greg Matthews bowled a maiden. I took 3 wickets in the next over and ended up with 3 for 11. We won the test match, and that was the first time, even though it was a couple of tail-enders, that was the first time that I felt I contributed, and I felt good about myself that I contributed. Came back to Australia, 92, played the West Indies. I didn't get picked in the first test match. It was a draw in Brisbane. I made 70 with the bat and took 6 for against Western Australia. Got picked for the next test match at Melbourne, and I got 752 to win the test match, help win Australia win the test match, and that was sort of the start of, I thought, well, I can play against the West Indies. Took 7 for 50. If I bowl like that, I belong at this level, I'm good enough at this level. And I think when you first start, it's all about not embarrassing yourself. And then once you've had a taste of success and you've delivered the goods, you then know that you're good enough to belong, and that's when the good stuff starts. Mm-hmm. So that was my sort of start to it.
Shane, you spoke about the training you did with Terry Jenner, and this amazing thing about landing the ball on that hanky blindfolded. There's a test match on tomorrow. Suppose if you were playing this game tomorrow, what would be your pre-match drill? What would you be doing now, say the night before?
Yeah, look, sessions, generally, as you lead up, let's say it's 3 days. It's about 3-4 days you start preparing for a test match, especially the first test match a little bit longer. Say the 4th day, 3rd day leading up to the test matches is generally just getting the feel of the ball, finding your rhythm, and starting to feel good about yourself. And if you have to stay there for 2 or 3 hours until you start to feel that, then so be it. The day before a test match is just a top-up. You've done all your work. You shouldn't, the morning of a game, the day before a test, you should be ready. You shouldn't have to do too much the day before a test. It's more specific stuff, just sharpening up, making sure you got that rhythm. Bowling is all about rhythm. So if you've got your rhythm up, and I remember probably the longest I ever bowled the day before was the 2005 Ashes series. I was playing county cricket for Hampshire leading up to the test match, the first test match in the Ashes, and I wasn't bowling very well. We played Essex at one of the outgrounds. I made 100, but I bowled terribly, and I wasn't happy. Got to Lords for the test match to start preparing, and I ended up bowling for 6 hours the day before the game because I wasn't happy. Essex got the runs, and I should have bowled them out. And so I bowled for 6 hours the day before the game, and in the end, I think I took 40 wickets in that series and did okay. But so yeah, generally it's a top up the day before, but that one particular time I wasn't happy with my bowling. So my advice to anyone out there would be, if you're not happy the day before a test match, stay there and don't leave until you are happy with your own game, whether it's batting, bowling, catching. Don't leave until you feel you're prepared.
On days when you feel the ball's not coming out right, what do? How does a bowler get back into form? How does he find his rhythm?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and it works differently for different people about how to find your rhythm and how to get back into it. There are times where you should just, stay at the nets, bowl, you haven't really got it, have a break for 15, 20 minutes. Come back in half an hour and start again. If it's still not happening, have a break, come back again. And then there's other days where you have to get through it, because in a game you can't really say, look, I just need a break and come back to it. So you've got to get through that. So that comes with experience. The longer you play, you understand your body, you know what you need to do, you understand yourself a lot better. So that takes time. It's harder for the younger players because they feel like they've just got to keep going and bowl, which sometimes is not great. But you've got to understand and work out what's best for you.
In a match situation, you're bowling to a batsman whom you played with many times. He knows what you are, like, you know him. Both have have complete knowledge about each other. So on that particular day, when you're also on the top of your run-up and you got Tendulkar on the other side, what are you looking for? How are you planning to get him out on that particular day? Are you sensing whether he's timing the ball right? Is he, confident? Are his feet moving? What kind of strategy do you have in your head to get a batsman out who you know very well?
Yeah, it's a good question. You know, when we used to come here and play India or play India in Australia, you know, the top order of India was as good a side as there's ever been. The top batsmen they had in India there, you know, with Ganguly and Dravid, Laxman, Sachin, Azharuddin, these sort of players. Now, they're as good a players as ever been playing the game. So it was never easy to bowl to those guys. And in conditions here that they love playing in too. So it was very difficult to bowl to those guys. But you knew their strengths and you knew their weaknesses. And some days you would win, some days you would lose. Unfortunately, I lost most of the time against them, but I won occasionally. But I lost most of the time. But that's why Test cricket's so wonderful, because in the shorter forms of the game, you don't have those opportunities as much. In Test match cricket, the best team will always win. In Test match cricket, that's not always the case in one-day cricket or 2020 cricket. But in Test match cricket, the best team will always win. I remember when I first played India, 91-92. And Sachin got 100 in Sydney on a turning wicket. Then he got 100 in Perth on a fast track, where I think Mike Whitney got 7 for 20 and we bowled India out for 180. Sachin got 100. So I knew it was a shame. I think the next time we played in a Test match was 98 here in India, so seven odd years later. And I remember the first over, I'd heard we played him in a practice match. He was plumb LBW, given not out off my bowling for naught, and he made 200 in the practice.
Who was umpire?
I don't know who. I think it was his dad. But he ended up making 200 in the practice match, which was okay. We got to the first Test match, and I think I got Rahul Dravid out, caught slip, and Sachin came out. And the first ball I bowled, there was sort of this amazing hush that came over the ground when Sachin came out. There's screaming at all gone, you know, the Sachin, that all started. And then he eventually took centre and there was this hush. I remember it was just, I've never heard an Indian crowd so quiet. This was the first time we'd sort of played in a Test match against each other for 7 years. He was the number one batsman, I was the number one bowler. And the whole series was Sachin versus Warne, where it was Australia versus India. But so it was like, we could both, you know, we'd talk to each other before the game, we were friends and all those sorts of things. But once we sort of, I had the ball in my hand and he was at the other end, I remember looking down, he had that little nod that he does, and I bowled the first ball and he smacked it straight past mid-off for 4. First ball. And I went, shit, that's not a bad shot. Second ball, play and miss. Third ball was a defensive shot. Fourth ball, he went for a big, I threw the ball wide, I went for a big cover drive, caught Mark Taylor at slip for 4. And I went, well, that wasn't that hard. Wasn't that hard. The second innings, I reckon, is probably the best 100 that, in the 140-odd Test matches I played, was probably the best 100 I've seen. India were in a little bit of trouble. I can't remember exactly what they needed to win, 300 and something. And I remember I was bowling around the wicket into this crater like this, and I'd taken a couple of wickets. And the first over, third or fourth ball, he sort of played a slog sweep that went over mid-wicket for 6. And I think he made 145 or 148 or something like that. And I reckon and they won the game. It was an unbelievable innings from Sachin, and that showed his class after the first innings into that, and that started great friendship, great rivalry, etc., etc. But yeah, it was amazing to play against these Indian players, as you're talking about. You know their strengths, you know how you have to bowl to them, but most of the times, you know, some days you win, some days you lose.
Okay, you know, for somebody with your magnificent achievements, it's not been plain smooth sailing for you in your career. There have been ups and downs, there have been injuries, there have been indiscretions. You've had to struggle a lot throughout. How did you cope with that? And every time you're down, where do you find the spirit to get up?
Yeah, look, I think if there's too many players that come into Test match cricket or international cricket at the start and do really well, I can think of a few players that have done really well when they first started. But then when they fall and don't do well, have a form slump or something like that, they never really come back from it. I was, I suppose, in a way, lucky that I struggled at the start. I can think of some of the other guys I played with. Steve Waugh's another guy who struggled at the start and became a wonderful player. Glenn McGrath's another player that really struggled at the start. Ganguly struggled at the start. You know, there's the exceptions like the Tendulkars and Laras and those guys that have always done well straight from the word go. But I think it really helps if you've struggled at the start, because you understand and appreciate how hard Test cricket is. And along that journey, you're always going to have ups and downs. I think Bradman's probably the only one that never struggled at any stage of his life, in his Test cricket life. Even Bodyline, I think he averaged 60 or something like that. So, he might have struggled a bit. But so for me, there was off-field stuff that happened. There was on-field. I mean, from 91, 92 when I started to 98, I didn't have an injury. I had a little finger in, but 98 to 2001, I had 4 shoulder operations, 2 finger operations. I had a knee op. So I struggled for about 2 or 3 years there. I was never at my best. It took a bit of time to come over that. And unfortunately, I played India twice over here against very good sides. So I was never quite at my best, and up against great players too. So that was a bit disappointing. In that time that we played, we were such a wonderful cricket team, the Australian cricket team. We won home and away in that 15-year period. We beat every side home and away. But we had to learn how to win here in India too. And in 2004, we sort of understood in-out fields a bit more. We just played a lot better against the same side. And it took a while to do that. But for me, the ups and downs is all about you can't change the past. Too many people rely on what happened in the past and harp on that. I don't have any regrets. That might sound really weird because I've done some silly and stupid things in my life. And there's been some things that have happened in my life that, I suppose you would like to change, but there's no point regretting those. So I suppose for me to always be able to have a positive side or look at a glass half full or to always pick myself off the canvas, whatever happened is, okay, that's done. What's happening tomorrow? What do I need to do tomorrow? I never really thought about what happened in the past. And that's my way of, I suppose, compartmentalising things and not harping on things that have happened that are bad. I always like to harp on the things that are good.
Yeah, you use the word form. Now, for a spin bowler in particular, I know what it means for a batsman. How would you define form? And, how do you retain it? And if you lost it, how do you regain it?
Yeah, form to me is never pure statistics. I'm not big on statistics. Form is the way you're bowling. You know yourself whether you're bowling well or not. You know if you're batting well. You know if you're catching well. You know if your game's good. And if your game is good, then it will happen eventually. You might have to just be patient, and sometimes the game tests you and things go against you. People drop catches off. Things happen. You get run out. Someone takes a one-handed screamer. Things just happen. But if you keep believing, it's amazing. If you keep believing and you keep practicing right and you have form, then it will turn around. Then you go on this run where you have a great series, you might have 2 back-to-back series that are just unbelievable, and then the next one you might struggle a bit. I don't think, as I said before, there's no one that just keeps going unbelievably well. Batsmen work you out. You have to come up with something new. I just kept believing that form was always, to me, that I knew I was bowling well. And if I didn't have a good series, I knew I'd have a good one the next one. That's the way I sort of looked at it, rather than only took 10 wickets at 50 this series. That wasn't very good. Well, I mightn't have bowled well that series, or I might have bowled well, but I didn't have much luck. So that's why I'm not big on statistics. And also, if you look at statistics, you can look at when you were bowling. What was your other attack? Did you have any other good bowlers with you that you're bowling in tandem with? Did you have a good fielding side? There's so many different things that just come into it rather than pure numbers and what your average was. To me, it wasn't about that. It was always the way you played the game. It was always when you took your wickets. Did you help the team win, rather than you took 7 for 30 and bowled unbelievably well? That wasn't about for me. And I think people, if you ask the general public out there, who were your favourite players, I don't think they'll remember their averages. They'll remember the way they played the game. And I think that's more important than what the numbers are and averages are and all those types of things. So form, those sort of things, to me, it's always about the way you play the game.
Shane, you mentioned that in a test situation, the better team is likely to win most times. So how do you think the India-Australia series is going to play out?
Well, I think this India-Australian series, India are huge favourites. They've had a remarkable run here at home recently, and they're always tough to beat here in India. I think there's 6 or 7 players in the Australian squad that have played test matches here before. Not that successful. I don't think they've played in any winning series. The last time Australia won here was the one we were in 2004. So they've had 2008 and was it 11 or 13 or something, I think was the last one after that. So they've had 2 tours since then and both been not that great. I think the team rely on too few in the Australian side at the moment. But having said that, I think there's a few good younger players in there, and I think I just got a feeling this series is going to be a lot closer than people think. I think it's pretty easy to say it could be a whitewash to India, the wicket's going to turn. But if you look at the wickets here in Pune, at Bangalore, I think Australia played very well at Bangalore. I think there's a couple of test matches I think they'll do all right, this first one and Bangalore. So I'd be interested to see that. I hope Australia don't pick too many left-handers. I think at one stage they could have 7 out of the top 8 could be left-handers, and that works straight into the hands of Jadeja and Ashwin. Jadeja bowling into the rough to the left-handers all the time is so hard for the players to play. So if you have right-handers, he has to come around the wicket and bowl at the middle and off stump, which makes his job a lot harder. It's a bit harder for Ashwin. So I'd like to see Marsh, Maxwell, these guys play rather than the Renshaws and Khawajas. I know that's a bit harsh on these guys that have done well, and you could say, well, how are they going to learn if they don't have this opportunity? But I think Australia have to go into a mindset in this series to attack. They can't just sit there and say, we need guys to hang in there, wear the bowlers down. I don't think it's that type of series. I think it's a side of series where you've got to be attacking, and you've got to say, we're going to take it to the Indians. We're not just going to sit there. We're going to go after them. And that's a bit risk-taking, and you might lose. You might get bowled out cheaply. But that's how I think Australia's best opportunity is to win this Test series. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. But yeah, India are definitely favourites. Australia are underdogs. But I think it's going to be closer than what you think.
The other day, Harbhajan he made a comment that compared to earlier teams coming from Australia, this one's a little low in quality. Do you see it like that?
Yeah, well, look, as I said, if you look at some of the sides that have come here that, well, I suppose when we played, if you look down that order, Hayden, Taylor, Slater, War, then you've got the McGraths and Brett Lees and Gillespies and etc. They're pretty good names and pretty good cricketers. In this Australian side, I think they always rely on Warner and Smith with their batting. But it's good to see guys like Hanscom and Renshaw and those guys coming through and making hundreds and showing they can catch and they can field as well. So that's exciting. And then you've got guys like Mitchell Marsh, who's sort of very frustrating because every time he comes in, he doesn't do anything. And he's got the talent and the skills to do it. So maybe this is the making of him. This sort of series could be the making of him. Glenn Maxwell I'd like to see him in there. I mean, he's a bit of a fruitcake. He's a bit of a nutter. And all those types of things. He could try and reverse sweep the first ball. He could do something stupid. But he's one of those guys as a match winner. He could win you it in the field. He could take that catch. He could run you out. And I think having someone with an X factor like that for this sort of series is something Australia shouldn't overlook. So, you look at their bowling, I think Hazelwood and Stark are quality. I think they've got different strings to their bow. I love this young Swepson. I really hope they play him instead of O'Keefe. I don't think that'll happen. O'Keefe, to me, I haven't seen him turn a ball. He plays half his games in New South Wales against first-class cricketers in Sydney on a raging turner. So, yeah, he's got a good first-class record. But just because you've got a good first-class record doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be successful at Test level. It takes different qualities at Test level than first-class level. And to me, Swepson spins the ball. If I look at attacking bowlers, it's going to take wickets to win you the game. If you look at a fast bowler, you want to see him bowl fast. If you look at a swing bowler, I want to see him swing the ball. If I look at a spin bowler, I want to see him spin the ball, not bowl straight breaks. So
this is a very unusually defensive-sounding Australian side. There was a statement.
No, I don't think it's a defensive side. I think
the statements coming out of the Australian camp. For instance, Steve Smith made a statement today that we are equipped to handle the Indian conditions. There's no sort of aggression or positive intent. It's as if we will do our best, we'll defend, we'll compete with India.
I think that's when he's saying we're equipped for the Indian conditions. I think that's a quietly confident captain. I think he's got the players that he believes that can play well in these conditions. I think he's quietly confident, and that's why I said I think Australia will do a lot better than what people think. I think it's pretty easy to write Australia off and say we've beaten England, we've beaten New Zealand, we've smashed those guys. I think Australia are a better side than England. I think they're better equipped. I think they're better, got more strings to their bow. They've got more attacking players. I think they've got better bowlers. They were using Moeen Ali as one of their, who's like a Maxwell. So, look, I think Australia are a better balanced side. They've got more imagination. They'll be better captained by Steve Smith, who's got a bit more imagination. I think it's going to be a very good series. And I think Australia are quietly confident.
Your views on the recent staggering performances of Virat and Ashwin?
I mean, Ashwin, I love watching him bowl. I love his aggression with the ball. I love what he can do with the ball. I love his patience. I think I like watching Jadeja bowl too. I like both of them in tandem. Is fantastic. They get through their overs quick, which is good too. So I really enjoy that. Virat Kohli, to me, if I was looking at a side, no matter what form of the game, he'd be my first penciled in. There's lots of people saying AB de Villiers or Virat Kohli or Steve Smith. Virat Kohli is the #1 batsman in the world, in my opinion, no doubt. I think it's uncanny how many hundreds he's made chasing in one-day cricket. The way he scores his Test match hundreds, he dominates. It's like the Tendulkars and Laras. He's got that capability of just dominating. The Viv Richards swagger. He likes a contest. He doesn't back away from a challenge. He's instilled some toughness into the Indian side as captain. A bit of mongrel as well, which I like. So I think I love the way he goes about it, and I'm a big fan of Virat Kohli's. I think I love the way he does stuff.
Do you think the Aussies have worked him out? Do they have a plan? You're big on planning. You've got to go in with a particular plan for every cricketer.
Yeah, and when you're playing against the best, you need plan A, B, C, and then all the way to Z. So to me, Virat Kohli, he's sort of a strange one. It seems the wider the ball of off stump is where his weakness is. The quicks bowl wide of off stump, not just that channel, but wide of off stump, he seems to chase it. Even spinners he chases a bit there too. So to me, early on, I wouldn't let him feel the ball. I'd make him chaseable. I'd bowl wide of off stump with a couple of gullies and make him sort of feel the ball and chase it rather than bowl at the stumps to him and let him work off the pads. So, yeah, look, that's how I would try that first up to him, bowl wide as I possibly could to him, without trying to bowl wides, but instead of strong offside field and let him chase it and not feel bad on ball to start with.
Okay, coming to a little more general, aptitude of the Australians. What differentiates, according to you, one difference that is there in an Australian team when you compare it to the rest? That X factor, something that people miss out on and that they've got.
Yeah, I think that I can't really speak for the team now. I haven't been around the side for 10 years, but I think for when I played in the team we played in, it was the never give up attitude. I thought our attitude of we could win from anywhere. You go back to 2006 in Adelaide, where I think England declared 6 for 550 or something. Going to last day, they were 1 for 50 runs ahead, 9 wickets in hand. We believed we could still win the game, and we did. So I thought our belief of from all the players was we can win from any position, never give up, was sort of our mantra, which sometimes people would not go through the motions, other teams, or not give up, but they didn't believe they could win. And I thought we could always believe we could win.
About the modern game, do you think there is too much regulation in terms of match referees, codes of conduct, maybe red cards coming, shortly? Are the players sort of being put into very sort of tight lines in terms of behavior and conduct, and is the administration imposing itself too much on the players?
It's very hard to sound like it's tough to sort of out sounding like in our day and all that all the time, but I think the modern day player now, the one thing they have to be careful of is they're not mollycoddled too much, and they're not told how to think, and they sometimes don't think for themselves because they get told what to do. Because you've got a bowling coach, a batting coach, a fielding coach, a physio, a media manager, an assistant media manager, fitness advisor, dietitian, shrink, physio. You've got
too many people around the team.
I think there's too many people around the team, yes, I do. I think sometimes the captaincies now is getting diluted a lot because there's so many people having input. The players sit there and listen to 10 people talk all the time, where really it should be the captain, I believe, in the group talking. And the coach, at international level, I don't believe you need a coach, or you need someone, but maybe the terminology is like a manager rather than a coach. Because you really, when you're at international cricket, you need to manage the team. You need to kick someone up the butt when they needed it. You need to put an arm around someone when you need it. And hopefully the captain is doing that. But if you have all these people around, the captain doesn't do that much because all the coaches are doing that all the time. So for me, I think less people. The administration of the game, I mean, that's always going to get bigger and bigger, unfortunately. So that's hard. Changes to the game are some of the biggest things to talk about.
There's also this emphasis on buying into the team culture. If you don't adjust, you might be the best, but stay out. There's this example of KP. Also, if you don't do your homework, you get dropped. So is there an excessive sort of emphasis on compliance? You have to be part of the group. You have to agree with whatever is being sort of decided. And if you don't fit in, too bad.
Well, I think you always got to toe the team line. There's got to be room for Mavericks, X-Factor players like the Maxwells, Petersons, etc., across all the teams. There's got to be room for those sort of players. And that's, the stuff with Kevin Peterson's been talked about to death. But for me, I had Kevin Peterson for a couple of years and I never had one issue with him because I made him feel important. I think where England went wrong with Kevin Peterson is they told him, we just want you to play, you're not involved in anything. And he was sort of muzzled. Where if you asked him, what do you think the team should be today? What do you think we should do first? Bat or bowl? Even if you don't listen to him, just make him feel important.
Is there no scope for individual flair?
There is, but it's got to be important that the coaching staff, the captain, will have to embrace that. If the teams don't want to embrace that, then they're going to miss out on someone that could be a very destructive player.
That's what you mean by managing rather than really
coaching. That's right.
Exactly.
You've got to be able to manage the players and create an environment where everyone's equal. I don't care if you played one test match. I think back to 2008, the IPL we played here. We had Graham Smith, Shane Watson, these guys, Tanvir, that had played a lot of international cricket. Graham Smith was captain of South Africa, but I treated him exactly the same as I treated young Swapnil, who hadn't played a first-class game. And some of the other younger players that, they couldn't speak English. But we all got treated the same. And we were all in it together. And we lived it and breathed it. And we ended up winning the IPL in 2008, which was an amazing experience. One of the best things I've ever been involved in. It was wonderful.
You didn't have a coach either.
Pardon?
You didn't have a coach either.
Well, I was captain coach, but really just captain, yeah. But we just had a great group of players. We had some good people around us as well. And the players were hungry. They wanted to listen, they wanted to learn, and they wanted to play. And they were just thankful for the opportunity. So for me, it was a wonderful experience, that IPL. But we created an environment where everyone was happy and everyone was treated equal.
But personally, was it difficult to adjust to T20 cricket? Because you retired a year before that. You retired in 2007, and T20 started in the IPL in 2008. Was it difficult for you to adjust to a different format?
I think the hardest thing was trying to get your head around what the IPL was. I retired in 2007 and thought, that's it, I'm not going to play cricket again. And then 18 months later, there was this thing called the IPL where players were going into auctions. They were going to be owned by different people, and you were going to play with guys from all different countries. It was like, what is this about? This sounds pretty interesting. So Ravi, who's here tonight, and Manaj, who was involved in the Royals, rang me and said, look, we'd like you to be in charge of captain coach of the Royals. I said, look, I don't really want to play cricket again. And so they sort of convinced me to play and gave me the opportunity to run a team the way I thought a team should be run. So I was very thankful for that opportunity. And I think I repaid them by having a pretty good year and winning that first one. All of us played well. So I really enjoyed that. But yeah, it was a pretty special time, that's for sure. It was a pretty special time.
So that brings me, to the fact a lot of people believe, Shane, that you were one of the best Australian captains that never was. So was that a big disappointment in your life?
Not really. Look, I would have loved to have had the opportunity to captain Australia, but it's not something I sit here and think, well, if I had have done this, I'd have done that. I could have captained Australia. I was lucky enough that I played under a couple of wonderful captains. Alan Border was, to me, he's the godfather of Australian cricket. I think a lot of the players that we've seen come through, the Mark Taylors, the Steve Wars, the Mark Wars, the McGraths, or Boones, you could go on, Merv Hughes, all these guys that came in the mid to late 80s were all under Steve Waugh. And then myself, that came in the early 90s, then McGrath, the Haydens and the Slaters. We sort of just touched, I had 3 or 4 years with Alan Border. Those guys had a year or two. But he still helped that generation and instill what it meant to be an Australian cricketer. And for me, he turned it around. he then handed over a team that was ready to go. You know, it was ready to go. And Mark Taylor, to me, was the best tactical captain that I played under. He's the best communicator, best tactical captain, and yet Alan Border with his passion, his toughness and everything. So those two guys combined taught all of us what it was like to play cricket for Australia. And then from then on, we had Steve Warne and Ricky Ponting, who were different types of captains. I don't think they were nowhere near as good as Mark Taylor and Alan Border. They inherited a very good side, but they were different captains. Mark Taylor and Alan Border were wonderful captains, so I was very lucky. So for me to have that opportunity to play under those guys was wonderful. I had an opportunity to captain one day for Australia. I think I did a series when I was vice captain and Steve Warne was injured against England and New Zealand, and I did okay, and people seemed to like my captaincy. I captained the Royals, I captained Hampshire, I captained Victoria, and did pretty well in all those things. We won some trophies. So yeah, look, as I said, I don't have any regrets, so I don't sit here and worry about it. I would have liked the opportunity if it came up, but you know, I had too many off-field things that I did wrong. I did too many things wrong off the field that probably didn't allow that. I don't think it had anything to do with cricket. It was more about my off-field stuff.
It's 10 years since you retired. What do you think have been the positive advances in the game in the last decade?
The what, sorry? What are the changes?
Positive changes in the game.
Positive changes?
Fielding, fitness, whatever.
Look, I think when myself and Sachin had the opportunity to meet Don Bradman, who wanted to meet us both on his 90th birthday, we asked him about, you know, what do you think about the current day? And he said, I love the athleticism of the fielding. And I think when you see some of the imagination by the fielders diving over the rope, throwing the ball back, the way they're catching, I think you have to say that now is still getting better and better. I'm not sure about the actual catching, but as far as athleticism goes with fielding and general ground fielding, I think that has to be one area that's improved. I think another area is about the confidence the batsmen have now to take anyone downtown. If there's a deep mid-off, I suppose when we first started playing, you said, well, I've got to hit it over mid-on. I can't hit over mid-off. Now they just smack it straight back over their heads. So I think that... oh, there you go. Yeah. It was a wonderful day. So I think that just that ability of the batsman to take on the fielder, yeah, I like that too. So I think some things that are deteriorated is the general catching has deteriorated in slips fielding, and I think that some of the bowlers' imagination, they're just sort of allowing the batsman to hit them for six. There's not enough planning from batsmen to try and bowlers to outthink the batsman.
What would Bradman have thought about sledging?
Well, I'm sure it happened in his day. I'm sure it did at some stage. I mean, the highlights they say, oh, great shot, Don. You know, they clap every good shot. But I'm sure there was a little bit of stuff going, especially through body line. I think there was a fair bit of stuff. Sledging, to me, look, normally with the Australian-Indian series, you'll see a fair bit of sledging. But when you think about the two teams that are playing, Ashwin versus Smith, these guys play together. Smith's going to be his captain in the IPL. So I think that the IPL has helped broken down a lot of those barriers. I think there'll always be one moment in this series, whether it be tomorrow, the second test, whatever. There'll always be a moment where something happens, where it pushes the boundaries of both teams and the friendliness. And it generally starts off nicely. And as the series goes on, there'll be some sort of moment which will then go either way. But I think, look, outside of India, Pakistan, Australia-India is a huge series. It's one of the biggest series going around. It's going to be a great series. India favourites, but I think Australia will give India a pretty good run for their money.
Humorous sledging. Give us an example where you were really happy to hear something.
You were mentioning that thing about...
Well, I'm trying to think of an Indian one that happened during
the Indian series. What did you do to Gautam Gambhir?
One of the 2008, the IPL semi-final, we were playing Delhi. And in the first game of the IPL, Delhi smashed us. They beat us in 10 or 11 overs in the first game. We got hammered. We lost. So we played them in the semi-final. And we'd obviously talked about Sehwag and Gambhir as the opening. Well, Sehwag, we talked about how good he is. And I reminded, when we walked out to bowl first, I reminded Gambhir that I just walked up to him and said, listen, mate, no one's here to watch you. No one cares about you. We haven't talked about you. We don't care what you're going to do. We're all worried about Seawag. We know you're not going to make any runs. So, you know, you may as well just get out and stop embarrassing yourself. We can all get on with the game. And he sort of just, it ended up with off, is what he said back to me. And anyway, he got no runs and we won the game pretty easy. So it wasn't too major. But so sledging, I think what people sometimes think sledging is all this big, it's something subtle more than anything else. You know, I'm going to knock your head off or whatever. You know, that's whatever. But I think it's the subtle things that that can sometimes get under the batsman's skin.
Okay, let me ask you a few quick questions.
Yep.
Something that requires just maybe one word or a sentence. Most difficult batsman you bowl to?
Tendulkar and Lara. Brian Lara and Sachin were easily number 1 and 2. Then there was Daylight. Then you can have the rest, the Callises and Pontings and all those guys there. Daylight, Tendulkar, Lara, 1 and 2. Yep.
Okay. Most cherished moment?
Most cherished moment was walking out onto the Sydney cricket ground and looking up on the scoreboard and saying, congratulations, Shane Warne, you're the 350th Test cricketer to play for Australia. So to think about all those years, thank you. It was to only have 350 was not very many.
Greatest influence throughout your career? You could break that up, the start and the middle and the end, or just one?
I think my father. I think my father's probably been one of the biggest influences on my life. And then Terry Jenner. I think those two guys have really stood out for, kicking me up the backside when I needed to teach me about my bowling, and also give me a kick up the backside. But those two guys have had probably the biggest impact on my cricket career, and Ian Chappell's probably taught me the most about the game of cricket.
Most revered cricketer?
Oh, most revered cricketer. Tough one. Alan Border, I think I'd have to say. Alan Border, for me, just how tough he was. And you think back to that time when Australia weren't very good. He was making hundreds in both innings against the West Indies. He taught us how to sort of what it meant and how tough it was to play Test cricket. So for me, Alan Border was the guy for me was just magnificent.
Your best buddy in your team and outside of it?
My best buddy in the cricket teams. Probably Dimitri Mascarenhas, who I played with Hampshire for 8 years, and I played a couple of years with the Royals with him, but I think he's probably one of the funniest. Him and Merv Hughes would be the two guys that I've enjoyed playing with the most, had the most laughs with, and had some pretty good times with.
Okay. Your greatest disappointment?
Greatest disappointment would be the Adelaide Test match against the West Indies in '92. We were 1-0 up with 2 Test matches to play. And we were 9 down, needing, I think, 2 runs to win, and 1 to tie. And Craig McDermott got out to Courtney Walsh, caught behind, and we lost by a run. And we would have beaten, that would have been the first time the West Indies had lost a series in however many years. So to lose by a run in Adelaide was probably the biggest disappointment. That one in the '96 World Cup final, losing to Sri Lanka, those two were probably the biggest disappointments, I reckon.
A controversial one.
Yep.
An opponent that you disliked the most.
That's easy. Arjuna Ranatunga. I hated him a long time before everyone else did too. That's an easy one, that one. Arjuna. Goodness me.
He was the one who said that we were beaten today by a bowler who had taken 1 for 300.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, Arjuna, yeah. Look, I only swallowed a lamb. I think he swallowed a whole cow, Arjuna. But one of the funniest, Ian Healy, we're playing a one-dayer in Sydney, and Arjuna started feeling his leg like this, going, oh, my hamstring like this, and called for the physio. The physio came up to him and said, what's up? And he goes, oh, just under here on this leg. And we said, hang on, which leg is it? He goes, oh, this one. And then he got a runner, and Ian Healy was into him, and he ended up making some runs. We lost the game, and he was just anyway, Arjuna.
Yeah.
What about his next-door neighbour? Little kid throws a tennis ball over his fence. He jumps the fence, and Arjuna starts slapping him around. So he jumped the fence to try and pick up his tennis ball, his next-door neighbour, little kid. Arjuna, come on. We don't like Arjuna.
Yeah, coming back to the state of the game today, if you had the authority, what three things or few things you'd want to introduce or start or change?
Yeah, what would I change in the game of cricket?
Maybe some,
well, there's a few
maybe
things.
some rules, some laws.
First thing I'd change would be the ball. The ball hasn't changed. Everything else has changed. I'm not one of these advocates about the bat. So I think the bat manufacturers, if you can make the biggest bat you want, then make it.
But the ICC is already working towards
I don't agree with that.
restricting the bulk of the bat.
I know, but you're asking me what I would change. I would say let the batsmen make as big a bats as they want. I wouldn't have these ropes coming in 25 metres, 20, 25 metres. Make the grounds as big as they possibly can. Health and safety, the regulations say 5 metres, or 2 or 3 metres, I think it is. It only has to be. It doesn't have to be 15, 20 metres. So make the grounds as big as they possibly can. Let the bats be as big as they possibly can. But the ball has never changed. Why are we not speaking about the ball? To me, why wouldn't you weight one side of it like a taped tennis ball? If you could do that, it might even, so the ball always swing, then it might stop some of the people cheating and scratching the ball or doing those types of things, because the ball will always do something. So for me, the ball manufacturers out there should be trying to do something with the ball that can make it swing, make a bigger seam, so it seams more. I think the pitches is something that we really need to concentrate on. Having flat pitches that are good for batting all the time is not really that great for the game of cricket. You need a contest. Any game of cricket that has a contest between bat and ball, they're exciting games to watch. Whether it's spinning miles from ball one or seaming, whatever it might do, as long as it's doing something and it's a fair contest between bat and ball, all of us, commentators, public, fans, media, whoever, will enjoy the game of cricket. Don't have one of these I don't like these flat wickets that just 600 versus 600. I just don't like that stuff. So for me, change the ball. Two, I would, I think in one-day cricket, to make it a little bit more interesting, I would have no field restrictions. Put the field wherever you want.
At all.
Put them where you want. If you want to put 9 people on the fence, do it. Don't have any field restrictions. So the best captains will always win, because I think it'll come down to a tactical thing about where you want your fielders. In 2020 cricket, I would have 4 bowlers bowl 5 overs, rather than have 5 bowlers bowl 4 overs. Because that allows you then to have your best bowlers bowling extra overs. You can bowl them a couple at the start, you bowl a couple of them in the middle, and you bowl 1 at the end, or vice versa. You can have them 2 at the end, 1 in the middle, 2 up front, 1 up front. There's more, you're having better quality bowlers rather than these crappy part-timers coming in and bowling absolute rubbish, taking wickets. So I'd rather see the better quality bowlers bowling all the time. So 4 bowlers bowl 5 overs, I reckon, would be a better contest again. So there you go. Wicket, ball, no fielding restrictions in one-day cricket. 4 bowlers bowl 5 overs in 2020 cricket. Test match cricket, for me, we've got to hope that the players still want to test themselves to be the best. The challenge we have is that when guys like Ben Stokes, and good luck to him getting $2.8 million Australian for 6 weeks of the IPL, fantastic. Couldn't be happier for him. But what we want, though, we don't want people out there saying, I just want to play 2020 cricket now and get the money for IPL or Big Bash or CPL or whatever these 2020 leagues are, and lose Test cricket. Because we can all say Test cricket will always be there because it's great and it's been there for 150, over 100 years. It won't always be there. If we don't market it properly, if we don't market the players properly, if we don't have engagement from the public about Test cricket, it won't be there. And Test cricket is still the ultimate test for all the players. As much as we love 2020 cricket, we love one-day cricket, we love all that, that all helps Test cricket. So it's up to the ICC, the governing bodies of to make sure they market Test cricket properly. And I think if we do that, the game is always in good shape. We've just got to hope the players want to play Test cricket. But otherwise, we're going to lose all the best players and be franchise freelance cricketers that'll just play 2020 cricket around the world. Then our Test cricket product won't be that good.
Yeah, but Test cricket is already under threat. And now with England and South Africa also announcing T20 leagues, I think it becomes all that more difficult in terms of protecting Test cricket. I
think every country has to have a 2020 competition because people love it. And in society these days, everyone's in a hurry, everyone's got someone to see, and that fast-paced, fast-food cricket, rock and roll cricket is 2020. We need that. The television companies need one-day cricket because they have, for 7, 8, 9 hours a day, they have it on TV, and they have the marketing dollars and advertising dollars that come through. So one-day cricket will always be there for the TV people. 2020 cricket will be there for TV and the public. Test cricket is the game. It's the foundation. It's the history. It's the tradition of the game of cricket. And once I turned on the TV to watch, I think it was England, India, one of the test matches. There was hardly anyone here watching, and that's disappointing to see that not many people were watching test match cricket. Last year in Australia, there was a lot of people not watching test cricket. Day-night test matches is something we should look at, not for the sake of it, but in places where the climate works and where it is going to encourage more people to come to test cricket. That's good too. It's not a gimmick. If people can come down after work, that is good. But let's not make sure just all the time. Do it in the right places. So yeah, I hope Test cricket survives for a long time because it's still the best form of the game.
Listen, over the years, cricket has evolved. There have been changes, defining changes from time to time. Maybe from Packer to 50-over cricket to T20. What do you think will be the next defining change in cricket?
Yeah, it's what is the next defining thing? I don't know. I don't know what is. Maybe it could be the ball. Maybe, as I said before, the ball could be the next big thing and next big change in cricket. 2020 we've seen change all the landscape of cricket. But maybe someone's going to come up with this ball that can do things. Like a tape tennis ball that we all played with up the backyard or down the laneway here. A tape tennis ball that swings, you weight one side of that ball and suddenly starts swinging all over the place. A ball manufactured of that could be the next big thing in cricket. That's what I would say.
You also mentioned something about wider stumps.
Yeah, maybe you could have bigger stumps to give the bowler something. You'd have taller, wider stumps. They could actually help the bowler, a bit more of a contest for the bowler. I don't know. You don't come up with things just for the sake of it, and it's pretty hard as I think all of us would say, well, what is the next big thing in cricket? We've got day-night tests. We've got 2020 cricket. There's so many things that have happened. I'm not exactly sure. I think the ball, my thing about the ball would be the next big things that's never been touched in the history of the game. So I would say, if we can do something with that, that'll probably be the next big thing.
Some questions on the resurgence of leg spin bowling. I think every team, especially in a T20 format, sees the leg spinner as an attacking option. So, and suddenly off-spin has gone out of fashion. We had a session earlier today where Sehwag said off-spin doesn't matter anymore. Forget it.
Well, he's not rating Ashwin?
But that's what he said, especially in the T20 format. He said off-spin doesn't matter.
I don't know about that. Well, Sehwag didn't matter what you bowl. He just whack it out the park. It didn't matter what sort of bowling it was. He was scary to bowl to. No, I don't agree with that. It's great to see all spinners doing so well. I think there's, you look at some left-arm spinners doing well. There's off-spinners like Ashwin, who's the #1 bowler in the world. There's a few leg spinners now all coming through, and a lot of leg spinners are getting purchased at the IPL and are playing an important role, which is I'm biased because I love leg spin. But the more leg spinners, I think, why it's good, it's more interesting. Watching a leg spinner bowl and someone using their feet to a leg spinner try to hit him out the park is interesting cricket. If you see a leg spinner trying to pick which way it's going, which is a straight one, a wrong one, whatever it might be, trying to pick that bowler apart and try and hit him out the park is great cricket. And the other thing you love seeing is a fast bowler coming in and bowling really fast. So if you can see a good leg spinner and a fast bowler bowling and a bloke trying to take him on with a hook, they're good to watch.
As a leg spinner, when you actually fooled a batsman, when he couldn't pick you or you beat him, did that give you as much joy as actually getting him out?
Yeah, I think the biggest joy came when you had a plan and it worked. It wasn't very often. Sometimes they get out a different way. Occasionally, you'd have a plan and it would actually work. And it probably happened 4 or 5 times, maybe a couple more, not many. But when a plan actually works and you set someone up and it happens the way you planned it to happen I remember there's been a few off the top of my head. Graham Gooch, 93. I remember having a beer with Alan Border after one of the day's plays. And he's saying, how the hell are we going to get Graham Gooch out? And we were just talking, and I said, actually, when I bowled a couple of overs around the wicket, his front foot just went straight out. It didn't actually go out to kick the ball away. Maybe I can go around the wicket and try and bowl him around his legs. He said, okay, well, let's give that a go tomorrow. So the next day we went out and I bowled him around his legs. He just put his foot out like that, bowled him around. It was at Edgbaston in 93, and it worked. And that was, I remember looking back at the highlights when it comes on, and I'm pointing at Alan Border and saying, I bloody told you I could do it. So,
but there was a big bash game where you announced your plan and you actually got a batsman out.
Yeah, Brendan McCullum. The last ball on my previous over, he ran down the wicket and tried to hit me for 6 and edged it just short of point. So the next over I came on, I thought, well, he's not going to try that again. He's going to try and sweep me. So when I was live on the microphone and I said, well, I'm going to try and bowl a fast one at the stumps and he'll try and get him bowled or LB, I think he's going to try and sweep me. And he did try and sweep and I bowled him. So, yeah, that was nice. But, yeah, look, there's been, as I said, a few of those that are always nice. And that's probably the most satisfying part is when you have a plan and it works.
Did you get the feeling when bowling that there's a batsman at the other end who's accomplished, successful batsman, but he's unable to pick you? Did that happen?
That
you knew that the guy
Darryl Cullinan was one I used to
out.
love bowling to because he couldn't pick me at all. Generally, most batsmen, the good batsmen, could pick what I was bowling. They still had to play it, but they could pick what I was bowling. But Darryl had absolutely no idea. So it was great bowling to him because you could bowl him absolutely anything you wanted, and he had no idea which way it was going. Straight, flipper, wrong, and he had no idea. And he was a class player too. So yeah, it was like bowling to a 3-year-old to Darryl. So I love bowling him. If I could bowl him to a living, I think I'd be okay.
But was there somebody who knew exactly what you were doing, where you felt that he knows?
Yeah, most of the players, most of the good players you bowl to in the top order would know what you're doing. Occasionally you might, do them with a straight one or something like that, but most of the time they knew exactly what you were doing. But the thing is, what they didn't know is how was it going to bounce a bit more than they thought. Will it spin a bit more than they think? That was the key to try and outthink them that way. But they generally knew what was coming out of your hand.
How much, Shane, how much did you concentrate on variation of spin? I mean, there's a flipper, there's a wrong one, there's a leg break. But how much did you actually try and hone your skill to make sure that you had control over how much the ball is going to turn? Some lesser, some more.
Yeah, a lot, Arun, a lot. I worked out fairly early in my career that you had to. One of the first things you had to do in the first over or two was to work out what was the best way to bowl your stock delivery, what pace that was, and was it more side spin or more overspin to start with. So, for instance, somewhere when you bowl like in India here, it took me a while to work out that you actually had to bowl a bit faster with side spin here. And when you go to somewhere like an Adelaide, you had to bowl with more overspin. So it just took time to understand those things, and you'd come and bowl the same as you did when you first came here, and you go, hang on, why isn't it working? Then you had to try and work something else with a different ball. Then you go to England, you got a different ball again and different pitches. So you had to really sum up how slow the pitch was, how quick the pitch was, what would work better. So you'd bowl, 2 or 3 faster ones in your first over, then you bowl some slower ones, you bowl more overspin, some side spin, and work out what the pace was to get maximum spin. So if you generally, the slower you bowled, the more spin you would get. But then on the pace of the pitch, you'd have to work out if you bowled too slow, they could play off the back foot, where you want the batsman coming forward off the front foot all the time. So, yeah, that was the real trick for me, to work that out as quick as you possibly can. And then sometimes the batsman wouldn't let you settle. So you're trying to work that out, but the batsman's whacking you over your head and doing things. So that was the real hard stuff to work out. But, yeah, you just had to work it out. You just had to be as quick as you can to work that out.
Okay, 3 main attributes to be a good spin bowler. For a youngster, what would your advice be?
The first one would be patience. You've got to be able to have patience. Always try and get the batsman out. Never try anything else. Always trying to get him out, no matter what the situation of the game. Always try to get him out. That'll dictate your field. And I think the third thing is to enjoy and have some fun bowling spin. I think they're the 3 things. Yeah, enjoy, have some fun, always trying to get the batsman out, and have some patience. That would be the top 3 things.
Carl, we need to take some questions from the floor.
Okay, one quick question.
Yep.
When you look back, is there anything, I know you don't have any regrets, you just said that, but is there anything that you'd like to change about your cricket or your cricketing life or what transpired? One thing that you might want to change?
This might sound really weird, but I think I would have liked to have stretched. I never stretched, and I got 2 broken legs as a kid, and when I used to wake up in the morning after bowling 30 overs or something like that, I could not move. And I think now I look at the players now, and I think sometimes those warm-ups go for too long. But I think if I had got into some sort of yoga or stretching like that, it might have helped me. The first few overs really hurt. So I think stretch. I know this sounds really weird, but some sort of stretching and recovery actually do that a little bit better. I think the players do that really well now. Now our stretching was, they talk ice baths now. Our ice bath was an esky, and you pull the beer out of the ice bath. That was what we did. So it was. I think if I could have some sort of thing about my cricket career, it would have been to put a bit more emphasis on recovery, stretching, because I was horrific. So
maybe
that would have been
better support staff with the team.
I don't need people to tell me to. Well, maybe I did need people to tell me to stretch, but maybe not 10 of them.
So I think we'll take questions.
Yeah.
There's a Neeru.
Shane, one of the highlights of the Australian teams that toured India was Matthew Hayden sweeping, the daylights out of Indian bowlers. Recently, Glenn McGrath commented on the fact that there are not enough, he doesn't see enough Australian batsmen sweeping well enough. Do you agree with that? Do you think that's the case, that they're not really accomplished at the sweep shot as, let's say, Matthew Hayden was?
Well, I think it's suited Matthew Hayden. I don't think it's pointless. I don't think every batsman should try and sweep because they might not be any good at it. So you've got to work what's best for you. And if it doesn't work straight away, in the first test match you get out using your feet, then for the rest of the test series, you can't just sit in your crease. You've got to still use your feet. So for me, you've got to do what works for you. There's no point saying, you've got to sweep over in India, because that doesn't work for everyone. That's ridiculous to say that. That's not understanding the game of cricket. If you just think everyone should sweep, that's silly. You've got to work out, you've got to have a plan, and whatever that plan is for the individual, they've got to stick to it through the series, because that's what's going to work best for them. If sweeping's one of them, then great, but I don't think that's the answer. When I bowled to the Tendulkars, Ganggulis, Dravids, Laxmans, Azruddins, these guys, I don't remember too many sweep shots they played. They used their feet, they used the crease. Sachin played the occasional sort of upright stance to go really fine. The Australian batsmen that have been really successful here, Darren Lehmann at times has been successful here. Mark Waugh has probably been one of the more successful batsmen. Never swept. Matthew Hayden was the exception. He swept a lot, but there's not too many other players that I can think of from touring teams in Australian side that swept. He was about the only one that really swept well, and it worked for him. So I don't think he should be telling everyone to sweep. I don't think that's right. If it works for you, great, but have your own plan.
Come first.
Shane, you've dealt with a lot of downs in your life. Obviously, we've had so many ups. But missing out on the 2003 World Cup must have been the biggest disappointment from a cricketing point of view. How did you deal with missing out on the World Cup?
No, it wasn't the biggest disappointment in my career. My biggest disappointment of my career, as I said before, was when we lost by 1 run in Adelaide. That was my biggest disappointment. 2003 World Cup, I'm anti-drugs. I don't do drugs. I took a fat pill to lose some weight. I could probably take another one at the moment. And I took it from my mum. I never blamed my mum. I just took it from my mum as a water retention thing. And I got told that it was on the ban list. I went through the court system, went through that system with the Cricket Australia, and they did my previous, I think, 11 or 12 tests, all exactly the same, didn't mask anything, but I was made an example of. It was my fault for not reading a book. I should have checked. So, yeah, look, missing out on the World Cup was disappointing, but it was my own fault for not checking.
The lady at the back. I asked, not you.
Hello, Mr. Shane. Can you talk about your equation with Muralidharan?
I talk about what, sorry?
Your equation with Muthaiya Muralidharan.
My relationship with Murali?
Yeah.
Very good. I'm a big fan of Murali. Playing Murali was an interesting experience. You see this ball, this face, everything coming down the ball, and what he could do with the ball was just sensational. So he's a very fun guy to be around. I went, unfortunately, when the tsunami hit Sri Lanka, I rang Murali and wanted to get over and help. So we organised a courier company to get some colour-in books, some food, cricket equipment and everything. We went down to Galle, There was a guy down there just called Kashil. Thank you. And just wanted to help. So we went down there and just helped out Murali and all the Sri Lankan people down there and helped out Kashil in his village where he was teaching English and computers. And that horrific scene with a train where you can see the family all hugging each other still was, it was terrible. But so I'm very good friends with Murali. Sri Lanka's got a wonderful, after I came back after 2003, missing the World Cup, I came back and my first tour was to Sri Lanka in 2004. I flew my parents and that over to go and to be there as well. It was a pretty amazing place for me. It was 92. Sri Lanka was where I sort of felt like the first time I'd ever had any input into the Australian side. That was one of the reasons I wanted to go and help Murali and help Sri Lanka too. It was just a special place for me. So it's, yeah, I got a good relationship with Murali,
Yes.
even though he took 100 too many wickets.
Just two last questions. The gentleman there.
Who?
Gentleman there. Waiting for the mic.
Hi, Shane. Hi, here.
Yeah.
The question here is the art of spin actually dying? We no longer see those numbers which were so familiar with you, Murli, Anil. What I meant is those figures of 800, 700, 600. Are we going to see those numbers now?
I'm sure, I hope we do. I'd love to see a young spinner come across and take 800 wickets. Big fun to watch. Now, if you break it down and you say, well, if someone takes 5 wickets a game and plays 150 tests, that's 750. So the likelihood of that happening is, who knows? But Fred Truman said when he took 300, I'd like to see someone take 300 test wickets. No one will ever beat that. So, you know, you can't say now someone might take 1,000 test wickets. They play 5 wickets a test for 200 tests. They take 1,000. It'd be good fun to watch. I don't think we've lost the art of spin bowling. I think there's a lot. Look at the top few bowlers in the world at the moment. Spinners, Ashwin. You know, we did have Yasir Shah, who's just fallen off a little bit, but you had a leg spinner and an off spinner as a couple of best bowlers in the world with some good quick bowlers as well. So I don't think we've lost the art of spin bowling. Maybe some of the captaincy about spin bowling isn't that great. But I think there's some very good spinners around at the moment. And just watch out for this young Swepson from Australia. I really believe he could be a wonderful bowler. He's got to get given the chance, and I hope they roll the dice with him tomorrow.
One last question. Ayaz?
Shane, what's the big deal about playing overseas now? I mean, you know, look, every team seems to be playing well at home and not playing well overseas. You were part of one of the great teams in the history of the game, and one would imagine that players today, so many tours, they're touring each country so many times. A lot of people playing in the IPL or the Big Bash or some of the other leagues, they would be more familiar and playing better overseas than they are doing now. What is it that is restricting players from performing well overseas?
Yeah, I can't put my finger on why it is. Besides the obvious, obviously people feel more comfortable at home with their conditions. They've played on it more times than everybody else. But it's happening less now, teams winning away from home. For me, I think one of the reasons they don't spend enough time before the series. I think they come in, they play one game, and think they're going to be okay. Because they've been there before. I think when you look back, if I look back to some of the series that we played, in 93 Ashes series, we played, I don't know how many games we played before the first test and during that series. And then even in 2004, we played a lot of games leading up to it. There's a lot of the teams where we played well in series away from home where we won, even in Pakistan, Dubai, in all these Sri Lanka, these places, we played a lot of tour games. And we practiced a lot rather than just come in, play a 2-day game or something like that and then get into the test series. I think we understood the conditions a little bit more. And I think the other thing is they're playing so many other versions of the game. And they're playing so many 2020 matches here in India where it's completely different to a test match. So, yeah, I don't think there's enough game simulation or practice games as there would be as a test match leading up to the series. That's the only thing, because there's so many other one-day tournaments they have to play, or 2020 formats, or World Cup, or ICC Champions Trophy, or another tour. They can't. There's just not enough time for them to play those games. Where I'd like to see them play a lot more lead-up games and even tour games through the Test series, rather than have 3 days off. Have 8 days off and play a 3-day game in the middle. so someone can get some form or, work out what they're doing wrong. So maybe that's something why they're not winning. Teams aren't winning away from home.
Right,
Thank
Shane,
you.
thank you so much.
Thank
That
you
was
very much
lovely.
for having me. Good luck in
Wonderful.
the Test Series. May the best team win.
Okay, we also want to thank the wonderful people behind this fabulous event. And could we have Ashish here, please? Ashish Chadha.
Nikhil, please.
Really wonderful event.
Nikhil, where are you?
Nikhil?
Sing.
Ashish, the founder of Sporty Solutions and Inside Sport. Come, Nikhil. What a lovely event. Thank you so much. Okay, tell us one thing. Tell us, what is Inside Sport all about?
See, Insights. First of all, I would like to thank everyone here. It has been wonderful 2 days of sporting tales. We are really, to be very honest, it's a great pleasure to host all of you, all the panelists out here, great cricket writers who are part of it. So SporTale has made a start. We are going to be coming back with SporTale 2 in a better and bigger fashion. So we would like your support to always be there for us. Now coming back to Inside Sport, so this is what Inside Sport is all about. We are going to be catering to the business fraternity of sports. What we feel is the commercial aspect of sport in India is growing on, and we are going to be creating a B2B. We have created a B2B product, and which will be catering to the business fraternity of sport. So we hope that this will help evolving the entire ecosystem of Indian commercial sports. That's it.